it doesn't spread overnight as well. Now, the unrest in Gauteng may cost the jobs of the most vulnerable workers. The Casual Workers Advice Office in Germiston was torched. The organisation supports casual and contract workers. Let's chat about this some more now with the Foundation for Human Rights, Sarah Mota, joining me in studio this evening. Sarah, good evening, and thanks for your time. Just tell us, what is the impact of what has happened at this particular office? Who is affected and how?
Thank you and the listeners and viewers at home for the opportunity. The Foundation for Human Rights supports a range of civil society organizations and community-based advice centers across the country to provide free legal service to the most marginalized people and vulnerable who cannot afford a lawyer in the mainstream. So this is pro bono free legal service that is provided to the vulnerable communities who, at most instances, especially with the works of the Casual Workers Advice Office, is precarious workers who are in informal contracts, yet they are working for big businesses. So yesterday, the office was banned, and we condemn such type of violence, especially to institutions like these ones, which provide free legal advice services to the most marginalized and vulnerable.
Now, what do you think of leadership in the country, leadership in the province, in the cities as well, and how they have responded to what has happened?
For years now, maybe for the past 10 years or so, since 2008, where we saw 62 migrants, and some of them were South Africans, being killed on the xenophobic violence that took place then, we've seen the lack of political will in supporting and providing protection to the most marginalized and vulnerable. And as your reports are indicating, quite often these types of violence happen where majority vulnerable people live, and the conflicts then emerge amongst themselves as a result of lack of sort of socio-economic services. So the leadership is very important, political will, that's open enough to see migrants as a source to the country, not as a burden to the economy.
But in terms of how they've responded to what's happening now, I'd like to know what you think and what you think should be done.
It's not enough what they have done so far. We hear statements, but the actions are very, very, disturbing. You find that perpetrators are known in communities and they can be pointed, but, imprisonment and access to justice for those that have been affected. So there's, for example, in the xenophobic attacks of 2008, no perpetrator has been caught. Even now, we don't seem to have a clarity as to who are the perpetrators and what is happening in terms of them. We need public statements that points directly who the perpetrators and where the access to justice track is on.
I mean, it's all been a bit confusing this time around, Sarah, because we don't quite understand whether this really is targeted at foreign nationals who are in South Africa. Some of it doesn't seem to make sense, because just yesterday we had people in the Joburg city centre saying, but I'm South African and they've destroyed my shop. So do you have, I don't know, more sinister, do you believe that there might be something more sinister behind this, and that xenophobia of foreign nationals are just being used as the scapegoats?
As I said, in the 2008, it's a good example. Both migrants and South African men were killed. The identification as to who is white, which nationality is each person, it becomes difficult when people are caught up on fire. So you don't know. Basically, the mainstream is that it's an informal economic sector and the spaza shop sector, which is owned by both South African and non-nationals who are of African origin or Asian origin. And when those incitement of statements that promote or propagate xenophobia are out there by some of our leadership, then everybody gets caught on fire.
So what needs to happen now?
We demand, as the civil society and the Foundation for Human Rights, accountability. We found that throughout our work, accountability is a huge, and impunity is a huge problem. And if the state is really serious about dealing with xenophobia, and all the violence that is happening in the country, it must ensure that those perpetrators are held and they face the justice system. But we seem to see that there's not much interest on that. Hence, I think everybody is angry now who is in the forefront of fighting social justice issues for migrants.
And it seems police are really battling to actually deal with the situation as well at the moment.
They are actually sometimes involved in the violence that happens.
That's what we've been hearing. Okay, thanks very much for that, Sarah Motta from the Foundation for Human Rights. Let's hope that we will see some calm return to these areas as soon as possible. We're still